Welcome back, friends. Today we begin one of the most inspiring journeys in human history, the story of Aristotle, the man whose wisdom shaped the world for thousands of years. This is not just a story about a philosopher. It's a story about a boy who turned his curiosity into power, his questions into wisdom, and his thoughts into greatness. It's the story that reminds us, you don't have to be born great to become great. You just have to keep learning, keep questioning, and never stop growing. Part 1. The boy who never stopped asking why. Many centuries ago, in a small town called Stagira in ancient Greece, a little boy named Aristotle was born. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, but he had one gift that made him different: a curious mind. From the moment he could speak, Aristotle was full of questions. When he saw the stars, he asked, "Why do they shine?" When he saw the sea, he asked, "Why does it never end?" When he saw people, he asked, "Why do we live the way we do?" While other children were playing outside, Aristotle was thinking deeply about life, nature, and the world around him. His father, who was a doctor, taught him about the human body, how it works, how it heals, how everything in nature has a purpose. That lesson stayed in his heart forever. Everything in life happens for a reason. But life was not easy for young Aristotle. When he was still a boy, he lost both his parents. The world felt cold and empty. Many would have broken down, but not him. He made a promise to himself. If life takes something from me, I will replace it with knowledge. So he left his small town and went to Athens, the greatest city of learning at that time. There he joined Plato's Academy, the most famous school in the world. At first, he felt like a stranger. Everyone around him seemed smarter and more confident. But Aristotle didn't give up. He listened more. He observed more. He asked better questions. And slowly, he became the brightest student of all. His teacher Plato said that Aristotle's mind was like a fire that never stopped burning. Aristotle believed that thinking is the real strength of a human being. He once said, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to think about an idea without immediately accepting or rejecting it." He learned that real intelligence is not about knowing everything. It's about being open to everything. Through his curiosity and patience, Aristotle began to see the world differently. To him, every tree, every animal, every star was a teacher. He discovered that wisdom is everywhere, if only we are willing to see it. Part 2. The student who became a teacher of kings. At Plato's Academy, Aristotle spent 20 years learning, studying, and questioning. He didn't just accept what his teacher Plato taught. He explored it deeply. When Plato said that truth lives beyond this world, Aristotle asked, "What about the truth we see here in this world, in the soil, in the sky, in the heart of human beings?" He believed that wisdom should not only be imagined, it should be experienced. Every day he would walk through the gardens, observing birds, animals, plants, and people. He began to notice patterns, how nature works, how life grows, how everything has a cause and a purpose. He realized something powerful. Knowledge is not just found in books. It is found in life itself. While other students were satisfied with memorizing lessons, Aristotle wanted to discover his own truths. He began writing ideas in small scrolls, questioning everything from how people think to how governments should work. Slowly, his thoughts became so deep that even his teacher, Plato, respected his growing wisdom. But when Plato passed away, things changed. Aristotle left Athens and began to travel. He visited different lands, places like Asia Minor and Lesbos, where he continued to study nature and people. He spent hours by the sea, watching fish and birds. He studied how creatures live, how they survive, how they are connected to each other. He began to understand life as one great design, everything depending on everything else. During his travels, Aristotle was invited by King Philip of Macedonia, one of the most powerful rulers in Greece. The king had a son, a young boy named Alexander. King Philip wanted his son to learn not just war, but wisdom. He wanted a teacher who could guide his mind, not just his sword. And for that, he chose Aristotle. This was a turning point. Aristotle became the teacher of the future king, Alexander the Great. Imagine that. The world's wisest philosopher guiding the world's most powerful warrior. Every morning, Aristotle and Alexander would walk through the gardens together. Aristotle didn't teach through long speeches. He taught through questions. He asked, "What is courage? Is power greater than wisdom? Can a man rule others if he cannot rule himself?" He taught Alexander that true leadership begins within, that before you conquer the world, you must first conquer your mind. Aristotle showed him that knowledge is not a weapon, it is a light, and Alexander never forgot those lessons. Later, when he became a great conqueror, he carried books written by Aristotle everywhere he went. Aristotle's influence was growing. He was no longer just a student. He was a thinker, a teacher, and now a guide to kings. But he never stopped being curious. He kept studying the stars, the animals, the weather, the laws of human behavior. He wanted to understand everything that existed. He once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." To Aristotle, knowledge was not about showing off. It was about understanding life deeply, honestly, and peacefully. He believed that happiness comes not from wealth or fame, but from living a life of purpose and reason. He called this state eudaimonia, a Greek word meaning living with a good spirit. It meant being the best version of yourself every single day. So, while others chased power, Aristotle chased truth. While others wanted gold, he wanted understanding. And that's what made him immortal, not by name, but by wisdom. Part 3. The Birth of the Lyceum, a place where wisdom walked. After years of teaching and traveling, Aristotle returned to Athens, the heart of learning and culture. But this time, he wasn't the curious boy who had come to study. He was now a master of knowledge, ready to share his own ideas with the world. Athens had changed, and so had he. Plato's academy still existed, but Aristotle wanted to create something different. A school where learning was not limited to books and theories, but connected to real life, real observation, and real thinking. So he founded his own school, the Lyceum. It wasn't just a building. It was a living, breathing world of ideas. There were gardens, pathways, open spaces, and rooms filled with scrolls. Every day, students from all around Greece gathered there to listen, question, and explore. Aristotle had a unique way of teaching. He didn't sit on a throne and speak like a king. He walked as he talked. He believed that movement helped the mind stay active, that walking side by side with students made learning natural. That's why people began calling his followers peripatetics, which means the people who walk while learning. In the Lyceum, Aristotle discussed everything, from the movement of stars to the emotions in a human heart. He studied how people think, how animals behave, how societies rise and fall. He believed that knowledge was like a great tree, every branch connected to another, and all of them reaching for the truth. His students admired his calm nature. He never shouted or forced anyone to agree with him. Instead, he guided them to discover answers by thinking deeply. When someone asked a question, he would not give the answer immediately. He would say, "Let us observe, let us think, and the truth will show itself." Aristotle loved logic, the art of correct thinking. He believed that every question must be understood step by step, like climbing stairs. First, observe. Then, ask why. Then, look for evidence. Finally, come to a conclusion. This way of thinking became the foundation of modern science. He taught that knowledge without reason is like a body without a soul. Aristotle also began writing, not just a few pages, but hundreds of works on every topic imaginable: philosophy, biology, ethics, politics, literature, and even art. He wanted to understand how everything worked, from the stars in the sky to the purpose of human life. He taught that everything in the world has a reason for existing. A seed grows into a tree because that is its purpose. A human seeks happiness because that is our purpose. And true happiness, he said, is not in pleasure or luxury. It is in excellence. He believed that when we use our abilities to their fullest, we feel truly alive. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. That single idea became one of the greatest lessons in history. He taught that greatness doesn't come in one moment. It is built day by day, through small actions done with purpose. At the Lyceum, his students didn't just study facts. They learned how to think. They learned to see beauty in knowledge, discipline in reason, and purpose in life. For Aristotle, learning was not about showing how smart you are. It was about becoming a better human being. He believed that wisdom and character are connected. A person can be intelligent but still unhappy if they lack virtue. So he taught that we must train both, the mind and the heart. He often said that the goal of education is not just to fill the brain, but to shape the soul. The Lyceum became a center of light in a world full of darkness. People came from faraway lands just to hear him speak, to walk beside him, to ask him questions. And Aristotle answered them not with pride, but with patience. Because he believed that true knowledge makes you humble. Through his teachings, he built something greater than any monument. He built a way of thinking that would guide humanity for thousands of years. His school became a symbol of freedom, truth, and discovery. But life was not only about success. Soon, Aristotle would face challenges: political jealousy, war, and exile. Even then, his spirit remained unbroken. He had given the world a gift that no one could destroy: the love of learning and the courage to question everything. Part 4. The storm of jealousy and the test of wisdom. Aristotle's school, the Lyceum, had become the beating heart of knowledge in Athens. People came from every corner of Greece to listen to his words. His students respected him deeply, and even kings admired his intelligence. His ideas about logic, ethics, and reason were spreading everywhere. But whenever someone shines too brightly, there are always shadows that grow around them. Aristotle's growing fame began to make others jealous, especially those who saw him as a threat to their own power. Some philosophers disliked how Aristotle questioned old traditions. Some politicians feared that his influence on young minds was becoming too strong. Still, Aristotle kept teaching. He never argued with anger. He believed that truth did not need to shout. It only needed to stay calm and consistent. But soon, the peace he had built began to shake. Years earlier, Aristotle had taught a young prince, Alexander of Macedonia, who had now become Alexander the Great, the ruler of a massive empire. Alexander's power reached across nations, and many people connected Aristotle's wisdom with Alexander's success. But after Alexander's death, political chaos spread through Greece. People began to blame anyone who was close to him, even his old teacher. Aristotle's enemies saw this as an opportunity. They began spreading lies, saying he disrespected the gods, saying he was too proud, saying his teachings were dangerous. They accused him of impiety, of not believing in the gods of Athens. It was an unfair accusation. Aristotle loved truth, and to him, truth and God were not enemies. They were the same. But in a city ruled by emotion and fear, logic had no voice. Athens had once killed the great philosopher Socrates for similar reasons. Aristotle knew that if he stayed, he might face the same fate. So he made a wise and humble decision. He left Athens quietly. He said something powerful before leaving. "I will not allow the Athenians to sin twice against philosophy." He meant that he would not let them kill another great thinker as they had killed Socrates. Aristotle moved to a place called Chalcis, a quiet town near the sea. There, away from noise and jealousy, he continued his work. Even in his final years, he kept writing, thinking, and observing nature. He never let bitterness enter his heart. He could have been angry at the world, but he chose peace instead. He understood that wisdom is not only about knowing, it's about accepting. He had taught all his life that the happiest man is the one who stays calm in both success and failure. Now, he was living his own lesson. In those quiet years, Aristotle looked back on his life, from the curious boy in Stagira to the student of Plato, the teacher of Alexander, and the founder of the Lyceum. He had lived a full life, not of wealth, but of purpose. He had shown the world that knowledge can build empires stronger than stone. Even as his health began to fade, his mind remained sharp. He kept teaching his students through letters and scrolls, leaving behind thoughts that would live forever. Before his death, he reminded his followers of one simple truth. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. That humility made him timeless. Aristotle passed away peacefully in Chalcis, leaving behind not just books, but a new way of thinking. One that joined reason with morality, science with philosophy, and thought with life. He had faced fame, power, jealousy, and loss, but he never gave up on truth. His story teaches us that real greatness is not in being loved by everyone. It's in staying loyal to your purpose, even when the world misunderstands you. Part 5. The Wisdom That Never Died. After Aristotle's death, many thought his teachings would slowly disappear with time. But the truth was the opposite. His ideas began to grow stronger than ever. The world had lost the man, but it had found a movement of thought that would live forever. His students at the Lyceum continued his work. They kept his writings safe, copying his notes and passing them from one generation to the next. Those papers were not ordinary. They were the foundation of almost every subject we study today. Science, politics, biology, logic, poetry, and philosophy. Aristotle had written about everything that touched human life. He wanted people to understand not only how the world works, but also how we should live in it. His works were so deep and detailed that people later called him the master of those who know. For hundreds of years, his teachings were studied in Greece, then in Rome, and later in the great libraries of the Middle East. When Europe went through dark times, when knowledge seemed to disappear, it was Aristotle's writings that helped keep the flame of wisdom alive. Muslim scholars like Averroes and Avicenna studied his books, explained them, and translated them into Arabic. From there, they traveled to Europe again, where thinkers like Thomas Aquinas brought them into the heart of education. By the Middle Ages, every great university in Europe was built on Aristotle's principles. His ideas about logic became the foundation of scientific thinking. His writings on ethics taught people about right and wrong in a balanced way, not through fear, but through reason. He had taught that virtue is not something we are born with. It's something we practice every day. He believed that every person has a choice, to rise through discipline or fall through laziness. He said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. That one idea became a guiding light for leaders, inventors, and dreamers for more than 2,000 years. Aristotle's wisdom touched every field. In science, his method of observation became the foundation of modern research. In ethics, he taught that happiness comes from living a balanced life. Not too much, not too little, but just right. In education, he showed that learning is not about memorizing, but about understanding. In leadership, he said that the best rulers are those who rule themselves first. Even in our modern world, when we talk about success, purpose, habits, or emotional balance, we are still repeating Aristotle's wisdom in new forms. He showed humanity how to think clearly, how to question fearlessly, and how to live wisely. The most beautiful thing about Aristotle's legacy is that it never belonged to one country or one time. It belongs to everyone who loves learning. His life proved that ideas can live longer than empires, and knowledge can cross oceans, languages, and generations. When people speak about greatness, they often mention kings and warriors. But true greatness, Aristotle showed, doesn't come from power. It comes from understanding life deeply. He proved that a person with a pen and a question can change the world more than a person with an army. And so, centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, but Aristotle's words still remained, alive in classrooms, in books, in minds, and in hearts. Every time a child asks, why? Every time a student seeks truth, every time a teacher inspires, a part of Aristotle still lives in that moment. Part 6. Timeless Lessons from Aristotle. The Power of a Thinking Mind. Centuries have passed since Aristotle walked the gardens of the Lyceum, yet his words still breathe life into every classroom, every library, and every curious mind. He may have lived thousands of years ago, but his lessons feel as alive today as they did then. Because what he taught was not just philosophy, it was a way to live. Aristotle believed that every human being has the power to rise above ordinary life through the strength of thinking, self-discipline, and purpose. He showed that greatness is not a gift. It's a choice we make every single day. Let's look at the timeless lessons from his life that can guide us even now. 1. Curiosity is the beginning of wisdom. From the very start, Aristotle's power was not his knowledge. It was his curiosity. He asked questions when others stayed silent. He looked deeper when others looked away. He believed that every great discovery begins with a simple question. Why? Today, this lesson reminds us that progress doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from having the courage to ask. Whether we are students, creators, or dreamers, the moment we start questioning, we start growing. 2. True education shapes character, not just the mind. Aristotle taught that the goal of education is not to fill a mind with facts, but to shape a good human being. He believed that wisdom without kindness is dangerous, and intelligence without virtue is empty. He said, "Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all." This reminds us that real learning happens when knowledge and goodness walk together, when we use our minds to serve, not to control. 3. Happiness comes from purpose, not pleasure. In a world that often chases quick comfort, Aristotle taught the opposite. He said that happiness, which he called eudaimonia, is not about pleasure, wealth, or success. It's about living a life of purpose and balance. When we use our skills, our time, and our energy to do something meaningful, we feel truly alive. He taught that every person has a unique purpose, a reason for being, and the greatest joy comes from living in harmony with that purpose. 4. Excellence is a habit, not a moment. One of Aristotle's most powerful lessons is that greatness is built slowly through daily actions. He believed that success is not a single victory, but the result of consistent effort. He said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Every small step, waking early, staying disciplined, speaking truth, choosing kindness, builds the foundation of greatness. We don't become better by wishing. We become better by practicing. 5. Control your mind, and you control your life. Aristotle taught that a strong person is not the one who conquers others, but the one who conquers himself. He showed this through his calmness. Even when the world turned against him, he stayed peaceful. He knew that anger, jealousy, and fear destroy wisdom. So he practiced control, not by suppressing emotion, but by understanding it. He believed that our thoughts create our world. If we think clearly, we live clearly. 6. The legacy of a wise life never dies. Aristotle never ruled a kingdom, yet his ideas ruled centuries. He never commanded armies, yet his words marched across continents. He proved that the power of thought is stronger than the power of swords. His life teaches us that one mind can change humanity, if that mind refuses to stop learning. Even today, every scientist who observes, every philosopher who questions, every teacher who inspires, continues his mission. Aristotle's story is not just about ancient Greece. It's about us. About every human who wants to understand life more deeply, live more wisely, and leave a mark that time cannot erase. He started as a curious child, faced loss, built greatness from knowledge, guided kings, and ended his life with peace. Not because the world gave him happiness, but because he created it through understanding. His message to us is simple yet powerful. Think deeply, act wisely, live purposefully, and never stop learning. Because when we learn, we grow. And when we grow, we move closer to greatness. And friends, if this story touched your heart and opened your mind, then remember, wisdom grows when we share it. So don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more life-changing stories and lessons. Together, let's keep learning, keep growing, and keep becoming wiser, just like Aristotle taught the world to do.